Hey y'all, I hope you're well. Welcome to another episode of Healthcare Boulevard. This is a podcast where we shine more light on healthcare, and our goal here is to provide more options to people looking to choose healthcare as a career path, regardless of their background. My name is Sena Kapomo, and I am your host and creator here. I thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your support. Remember, you can tune in on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Welcome, listeners on Healthcare Boulevard. I appreciate you guys being here. But today is another interview day. We have another guest speaker here. He is my first ever athletic trainer on here, which I'm excited to get into and talk to him. His name is Francisco. He doesn't go by him, but he goes by Francisco. As we just finished physical therapy, I felt this was gonna be a nice pair with physical therapy. I'm excited to get into it. I'll have him introduce himself. Francisco, good afternoon, good evening. How are you doing?
Hi, so again, my name is Francisco Gamboa. I'm a certified athletic trainer, practice in California, and I'm just doing good.
All right. I'm happy to hear it. This is an example of how busy he can get. We was gonna do this in the morning, but he had to move it a little fast because his ATC responsibilities, and I was totally okay with that because do your thing. take care of the young one. We appreciate what you do. So I'm gonna start with, what is a athletic trainer, Francisco?
Yeah, so I kind of took some notes, right? So I'll, kind of like the previous episode, I just kind of want to say what the athletic training website says.
Mm-hmm.
So this is straight from the National Athletic Trainers Association. So athletic trainers are highly qualified, multi-skilled healthcare professionals who render service or treatment under the direction or in collaboration with the physician in accordance with their education, training, and their state statutes, rules, and regulations. And then as part of the healthcare team, services provided by athletic trainers include primary care, injury and illness prevention, wellness promotion, education, emergent care, examination and clinical diagnosis, therapeutic intervention, and rehabilitation of injuries and medical conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a lot of words, right?
Yeah, of course.
So what? Let me go back a little bit, okay? Where are you working right now? Let's set the scene.
Yeah. So I'm currently working at a high school. In athletic training, we refer to this setting as the secondary school setting.
Okay.
I'm working out of a high school in Fresno, California, where I primarily treat the high school athletes. I am a district employee, and so the significance of that is that there are other high schools where you can employ an athletic trainer, and they do as an outreach position, either through like a hospital or like a clinic. So my position is straight from the district.
Okay. So you are working, are you working with any sports, or is it specific sports?
Yeah. So at the secondary school setting, I work with all the sports.
Okay.
So depending on which setting you work at, so like if you work at a college setting, let's say like, Division I, you might be, assigned to specific sports, right? So you might, be assigned to like, a higher demanding sport, or maybe like a lower demanding sport later in the spring, or vice versa. Whereas like at the high school, you're going to be working with everyone because there's not that many people to go around. Mm-hmm. Or if you're working in like what we call the industrial settings. So these are like non-traditional settings, right? Because you usually think of athletic trainers working in like schools, professional teams, colleges, but there's also athletic trainers in like, working in Amazon, working in Frito-Lay, working for Delta Airlines, Cirque du Soleil, in, so like I said, non-traditional settings, and they kind of deal with what we call the athletic population.
Okay. So what would they be doing in that sense? Like, because for you working in a high school or somebody working in a college setting, that's, or even professional sport, we see sort of like the setting is there, right? It's a sport. Mm-hmm. You're dealing with that. So for folks working with Amazon or Delta or what have you, as you call it, non-traditional settings?
Yeah, so those are those are usually called industrial setting positions.
Yes.
In those positions, the athletic trainers, they mostly work for like workers' comp style. So like they're just trying to prevent, just the workers going on workers' comp, right? So like if, they can continue working safely, right? Because that's always the key thing with, any sort of treatment is to make sure that they can return safely. And, if there's something that, hey, they don't have to miss as much time, that's where they come in and they provide some sort of treatment, some sort of education, some sort of ergonomical assessment to make sure that, hey, they're able to do their job safely, maybe whether it be, technique correction or anything like that.
Okay. So would that where you are working, are you doing a lot of hands-on?
Yeah. So at my setting, right, my setting's a little different from the industrial setting. Like I said, I work in the secondary school setting. I do practice doing treatments, doing rehabilitation programs, all within our scope of practice and all within our standing orders with our physician. So we work, like I said, we work in collaboration with the physician. They designate what our standing orders are. And so, to the viewer or to the listeners that don't necessarily know what standing orders are, those are just basically telling us what our limitations are, right? Because at the secondary school setting, we're an extension of the physician. We practice out there, autonomously, but we don't practice, stuff that isn't in our scope or anything like that. So we have to get that scope of practice defined in our standing orders. And then that tells us what we can and can't do.
And that's happening while you're getting hired, right? That's not happening on a day-to-day basis, is it? Oh, correct me.
No. So usually how it works is standing orders. They, you sit down with your team physician, as we call it, like the doctor that signs off on them. And they're usually on like a yearly basis. So they get, established on a yearly basis. You can kind of communicate with your physician that you're working with and be like, hey, we want to add this, we want to take away this, or whatever it is that you want to bring up. And then that's how we kind of establish what we can and can't do. So, I mean, some examples are like, for dislocations, right? Evidence shows that, the sooner you reduce a dislocation, the more chances are that it heals correctly. So, our physicians may give us the go ahead to relocate, one dislocation, but not relocate another one. So it just, setting those boundaries, is what that standing orders kind of does.
Okay. Thank you for that. And let's go back into your education. So you, as an athletic trainer right now, I know the profession has sort of like evolved like most professions, and right now it's at a master's degree level. Is that correct?
Yes.
So you have a master's degree with your title of athletic trainer.
Yeah. So, currently right now, athletic training is in the movement of requiring master's degrees. So by 2022, next year, all athletic training programs will be master's levels. Currently, there are some, in transition, trying to move from a bachelor's degree to a master's degree. Okay. Some have decided that, they don't want to pursue the master's degree program, have shut down. But then again, master's degrees have been entry-level programs for athletic training for a couple years now. I know when I graduated, my program had, been a master's degree program for 10 years and the first in the state. And so now they're going on like 15 years. I've been practicing, by myself for about 3 years. So, they've been master's programs out there. It's just that, they're transitioning up until 2022 to be all masters.
So what's that like in terms of, does the scope of practice change with the master's degree? And understandably, you just mentioned, so that transition has been happening. It's just 2020 is where the requirement starts, where if you're not a master's degree, you can't really have an ATC program, right? Does that change your scope of practice in any way?
No, not necessarily. So pretty much, in regards to the scope of practice, our governing body, they've been kind of, defining what we can and can't do. So, there's talks of adding, whether, the use of oxygen tanks on the sideline, is something that we'd be allowed to do. Whether, suturing is something that we'd be allowed to do. And then, so there's talks like that. But in terms of, having, one person having a bachelor's degree in athletic training versus having a master's degree in athletic training, the scope of practice doesn't change at all.
Okay. So it's just a matter of, just the degree level, but essentially you should be learning much the same, regardless of what program you come out of, right? As you say. Okay.
Yeah.
And so once with your education, which is about to be the standard study next year, it's a master's degree, which means you have a bachelor's degree before that. Is that okay? Can you give us a bit of a summary of how to become an ATC right now, especially a master's degree one?
Yeah, of course. So, my specific journey is I started off, in my undergrad pursuing a kinesiology degree. Mm-hmm. With the emphasis in exercise science. And, there's been actually like a really big movement in the last like 20 years where, athletic training. So I'm going to kind of go off on a tangent, but I'm going to bring it back. So, athletic training started, and the association started in the 1950s. Mm-hmm. And, at first it was housed under physical education. So our degree, it was based in physical education, but it had a lot of, human anatomy, human biology, human physiology, a lot of the courses that, physical therapy students were taking at the time, with the exception of, athletic training principles where, we kind of went into more details on what athletic trainers do. And then, it was like in like the 70s-ish where they went to more of a kinesiology degree. So then, it started transitioning to that. And then they transitioned to where, hey, we should align ourselves more with allied health professionals. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where the push has been going in the last couple of years is, hey, let's officially be, aligning all the programs as allied health professionals, which, the American Medical Association has recognized us as since mm-hmm. the 1990s. But, to tie it all back to where I went is, I pursued a kinesiology degree, exercise science. And then afterwards I pursued, I took the prerequisites and I went and pursued a master's level, entry level for the athletic training program. Mm-hmm. But you don't necessarily have to have a kinesiology degree to pursue that. You could have any degree really, as long as you do the prerequisites.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys have an entrance exam for ATC program?
No, so pretty much, I'm speaking for my program specifically here. When I was there, they didn't require a GRE for my specific program, but other programs did require a GRE. Mm-hmm. You had to take all the prerequisites, meet the GPA, and then, just have, the standard, letters of recommendation, interview process. But there was no entrance exam or, anything like that.
Okay.
I think where you're going is, does a bachelor's level athletic trainer and a master's level athletic trainer, are they allowed to do the same thing?
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah. So pretty much they are. It's now the big push is, if you got a bachelor's degree in athletic training, they are recommending that you get a master's degree because, if they're going to require everyone else to get a master's degree, it only helps you out to get a master's degree too. Mm-hmm. And the way that they do that is currently at the moment, they do what's called graduate assistant positions where you're practicing as a professional. It's almost similar to like a residency, but not mm-hmm. necessarily. Okay. So, you practice professionally. You're assigned a sport at a college because usually these graduate assistant positions are at a college. Mm-hmm. So you're working as a professional, you're treating your athletes. You may or may not have someone that you're checking in with. It's kind of like a guide, like, hey, are you doing the right stuff? All right, cool. But they're not necessarily dictating how you treat your patients, how you provide care. Mm-hmm. And then there's actually also, how do they call it? They call it, I think. So then there's also internships where you're a graduate already, you've become a professional, mm-hmm. and then you're interning with the university, similar style to the GA, except that, it goes from, you're working kind of autonomously to there's actually someone that you're going to have to report to. And they're more of just kind of like a mentor, like, hey, if you have any questions, reach out to them. Mm-hmm. Like if you have any questions, cause you're a recent grad, right? You might not know everything right off the bat, or, maybe something doesn't look as clear, like as the book did. So they're coming out, right. with the injury that's a little more different. Right. So, they might be someone to bounce ideas off of. But Yeah, so to answer the original question, they can do both the same thing.
But my next question is in a way related to what you do now, but why ATC? Why did you decide to go on this path, professionally speaking?
Yeah, so funny that you asked this question. So, any athletic trainer that listens to this, they're going to know that this is like the most common interview question that you get in athletic training is you get why did you choose athletic training? And then, the most basic answer is that, I was an athlete, I got hurt, the athletic trainer helped me, and, I never left the athletic training room after that, and I pursued athletic training. But for me, I wrote a little stuff down. So, because I'm kind of scatterbrained sometimes. I like to talk a lot. So I wanted to make sure that, I wrote this down. And so, me growing up, I always knew I wanted to pursue healthcare, but I didn't necessarily know what profession I wanted to get into. Mm-hmm. So, I always knew I loved sports, and, being a, cross country runner, track runner, wrestler back in grade school. I had some injuries back in the day that kind of like set me back in a year that was very important athletically for me back then. And so, they always left like a lasting impression on me that like, hey, you know what, like one day I want to make sure that the kid that, is trying to make it to the state championship that can actually make it, and, doesn't get held back by injuries. Mm-hmm. So, so after, talking to some people and, soul searching a little bit in college, because, at first, I kind of bounced around, pursued a couple different degrees, and then I finally ended up in athletic training, and I loved it. And, I've been here ever since, following, practicing, interning, whatever. So that's kind of why I wanted to help kids make sure that they reach their goals. Mm-hmm. Whereas, so hopefully they don't, get limited how I did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's fair. Now, what sport were you playing in?
Yeah, so, I like to stay busy, and I still kind of do. That seems to be a common trait in athletic training, to stay busy. But, back then I used to be a cross-country runner, track runner, and then I used to wrestle too. Okay. So I stayed busy.
I like it. That's the way to go. And so what is your favorite part about, you sort of already answered that. So sort of like, what's your favorite and not so favorite part about the profession?
So I'll answer the favorite one first because, again, I prepped on that one. And so, my favorite part about athletic training is actually the ability to connect with my patients and actually witness the return to play after an injury. So, the reason I say that is because, I feel like athletic training is in a unique position to, they see when the injury happens, they treat them right away. They treat them through the injury, and they get to witness them come back to their sport, injury free. Whereas other professions, they see them during the initial consultation, they might see them again for a follow-up, but they're not seeing what happens in the in-between, so like athletic trainers, they get a unique opportunity to really see the whole process through, and they get to really connect with them. So like when they come back to the field and they're playing, that's a victory for you too. The kids are happy, you're happy, and, they come up to thank you, and they're like, Francisco, I couldn't have made it without you. I really appreciate you. And, it really, makes me love what I do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then, so to answer your second part of the question, the least favorite part. So currently, this is kind of like a multi-part question. Mm-hmm. So, I do love athletic training, but there are a lot of things that athletic training kind of needs to, figure out and transition to. So my not so favorite part of athletic training is because there was so much change so fast, right? I hinted on, prior that we started off in the physical education major, and then we went to kinesiology, and then we went to, the allied health professions. And then it happened all really, really fast in terms of, the growth of a profession. So there's still a lot of, discrepancies on what athletic trainers, do, because you get some of the, I'm going to call them the veteran athletic trainers that, they kind of do things a little different than the more modern athletic trainers. And I feel like that kind of puts like a bad image to, as someone who doesn't know what an athletic trainer is, or what athletic training is striving to become as a profession, because you get a lot of the veteran athletic trainers that are practicing a little non-medically, whereas, we're trying to pursue, an allied health, education and aligning ourselves that way. So you'll get some of the modern athletic trainers, recent grads that are trying to practice medically, and some of the more veteran ones that are, we had continued education, and so there's opportunities to catch up, but it's, nothing beats, learning it in the classroom, so like that's where you get the hands-on, and that's where you get to actually really, dive into it and, learn it. And then two, the second part of the question that, I don't necessarily like is that, currently because we're just recently because we come and we're trying to shift our profession to where we want it to be. Sometimes, our stakeholders or whoever we're employed by doesn't necessarily see the worth. So we have to kind of fight for, establishing our worth, kind of how like, correct me if I'm wrong, how PAs had to kind of do it, to establish what they do to be able to, to be respected as, the physicians that they are, and to be able to see their own patients. We're establishing our value and our worth to our stakeholders as well at the moment. So
yeah, that can be, that it's a whole process for sure. Like you alluded to, we are going through the same thing. So I do see a lot of parallels for sure as far as athletic trainers and PAs. We're just really trying to find where we fitting in the medical field and in the clinical setting and so forth. So I appreciate that parallel. Another question for you though is, how is I know you put it here, so I'm just going to ask you and have you do a summary of that. Like, what are some of the changes in the work setting for athletic trainers?
Yeah, so some of the changes, right, is before, it's a lot more, documentation based. It's a lot more, evidence based practices that we follow, and patient outcome measurements that to establish, are we making good progress with our patients? This is how we dictate whether, hey, are we making positive change, or are we being stagnant? Are we even getting the patient better, pretty much? So, everything that we do is, evidence based. So, I'm human. I'm not going to know everything, but, I went to school, so I know how to find the stuff. I know where to look. I know where to get the knowledge that I need to heal somebody. So, if I don't know something, I'm going to go research it and, learn it. And as long as it's within my scope of practice, I'm going to do it. And, and then I record the patient outcome measurements where, for the, those of you who don't know what that might be, or what I'm, kind of referring to is, there's different, measurement tools that are objective that, could be used to measure, if there's change in a patient, right? So, some of the ones that, could be used is a lower extremity functional scale, upper extremity functional scale, the numeric pain scale. Those are just very basic ones, but we use those to kind of say, hey, are we making change? And this is how we kind of document that. But that's kind of how we do stuff there.
Okay. And for your program, as far as the education, do you have a didactic year and then clinical year? What are your program structure? What is the structure like?
Yeah, so pretty much what it is, we kind of have like full immersion or I might not be saying it right, but we have classes and then we have clinicals the whole time that we're in the program. There is talks to doing, I guess now what I think is full immersion, where it's like you do your classes, and then you have a full semester of where you're just, shadowing your preceptor. And then so you can get to see, from start to finish what a day looks like. Because currently, we don't get to see what they do at the beginning of the day, the meetings that they do, the administration work that they do, all that. We just kind of see what happens when, hey, it's the big rush of athletes that are coming in to get treated before practices. We might see some scheduled rehabs that, are scheduled for later in the day versus earlier in the day. But yeah, so currently it's like classes, then it's, the clinical rotations, and then, the boatload of homework that comes with the master's program.
That's a fun time. And how is the paperwork? Like, paperwork is one thing across the board most healthcare professionals don't like, including myself. So I'm going to ask you right now, how much homework, paperwork do y'all have to do?
So, I like to work as efficiently as possible while still trying to keep the most, concise and, effective documentation. So, I could see, on a high end, 30 to 40 patients in a day.
Okay.
And then on a low end, I could see 15 to 20. And so kind of what I do is I try to take a team approach to rehab. So, I'll teach the kids their rehab so I don't have to do as much writing. So, I'll teach it to them. They just grab their documentation paper out of their folder. They do their stuff. I'm monitoring all of them at the same time while they're in there. And then, they just drop it off on my desk. I just kind of make notes as I need to at the end of the night before I take off. Any injury notes that I need to make, I kind of write those at the end of the night as well.
Mm-hmm.
Any, we call it kind of like, I guess the daily logs or like coaches notes where we kind of notify the coaches of the progress of their patients or our patients, their athletes. Because sometimes, we mostly deal at the secondary school level with teenagers, so they might not relay that as good. So we have to do an extra step in letting the coaches know and letting the parents know, because you could tell them, hey, I have, you have a grade 2 ATFL, CFL sprain, with, mild edema and, it's, bit of effusion there and, you're going to go do this, that, blah, blah, blah. And they're going to look at you and be like, oh, okay, cool. And they're not going to know what to tell their parents. Yeah. So, there's a lot of steps that go into it, right. But if you have an efficient system, like I like to do a lot of the stuff electronically. I'm switching to it this year where I'm utilizing, Excels and trying to make those HIPAA compliant and FERPA compliant. Because, we have a lot of, student information that we want to make sure we keep safe. And then also when we send out coaches emails, we make sure that, we send them out through encrypted emails. So that way, again, another layer of protection for, information. But yeah, so again, another long answer, but it's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. Are there any fellowship or internship? Fellowship or what's the word I'm looking for? Residency opportunities, or that's not really a thing in your field?
Yeah, so it's more of like a more modern thing that's happening now.
Okay.
I know some of the students that graduated in the class before me that, they got their master's degree and they still pursued an internship. Whereas like, hey, you are, practicing as a professional, you have, someone that you can kind of mentor, like you have a mentor, you can kind of bounce ideas off of them and you can kind of, hey, like, I don't know what to do in this situation. How would you advise going through it? And they would kind of, make sure that you're heading down the right direction. And so that way you can treat your athletes the way that you want to and things like that. But yeah, so there is programs like that do kind of have like an internship, which is kind of the equivalent to like a fellowship or residency.
Okay. And then I'm just going to clear this. Do you, is it a common thing to find ATCs in a hospital, or that's not one of your settings?
Yeah. So, actually athletic trainers pop up in a lot of settings because a lot of the times, we have, because like I said, we're an extension of a physician. So we practice in a lot of different settings. So traditional settings, like I hinted at before, are like, schools, colleges, professional teams, some non-traditional settings that you might find athletic trainers are in, like the industrial setting. So like these is like the Frito-Lay working in the factories, Amazon factories, Cirque du Soleil, right, working with the performers, Broadway, they're, working with the performers again. And then in hospitals too, they do work with physicians. A lot of the times, again, they're extensions of the physician. So they're, if a physician sees a patient and, they're requesting them to get a brace or whatever, an athletic trainer might come in and fit them for that brace. Or, they might come in and, do patient outreach through the hospital, right? So hospitals sometimes get contracts to the high schools to provide care to them. As well as some orthopedic clinics in areas, and they'll provide, athletic trainer services to the hospital or to the school in exchange for referrals. And then that way, that's how they kind of make sure that the community is provided care and they're better servicing their community.
Okay. And then what are your shifts like? Just so our listeners get an idea.
Yeah. So, like I said, so right now, prior to coming on to the, to the podcast, I just recently came back from a semi-pro soccer game. we had a 2-game road trip, and you know, the team unfortunately was not able to have like hotel rooms, so we had to, you know, go come back, and there's like 3-hour drives both ways. But at the secondary school level, you know, you get somewhat of a, you know, time work-life balance thing, because you know, I get paid for 8 hours a day, so I try to get everything done in 8 hours. Sometimes, you know, that means, you know, you're working really hard for those 8 hours, but you know, at least at the high school level, you don't necessarily have to work weekends. Whereas, you know, maybe you're working at the college level and you might have a Saturday game. So, you know, you might work, you know, that extra day. You might get paid overtime for it, or maybe you know, adjust and you don't come in the day during the week. Or maybe you work with a pro team and, you know, you're traveling when there's games, like you're traveling a lot. Like I have a classmate that, you know, she graduated again the year before me, and she's working with a professional basketball team, and you know, she travels a lot. She tells me that, you know, she stays more in hotel rooms than she does her own house during the season, you know. So you know, it varies between different, you know, settings, but at least in my setting, you know, I work Monday through Friday, and then if there's a tournament or something at the school, then, you know, I have to work that day too, but it's overtime, so you know, we kind of go from there.
Now that you sort of answered my next question, which is work-life balance, would you say that is pretty much dependent on the setting you're working in, your work-life balance?
Yeah, so you know, again, you know, athletic trainers are very, I haven't met an athletic trainer that isn't a selfless person that, you know, loves to give to others. You know, and when I do that, that might kind of shock me, because it's like, you know, you come into this profession knowing that, you know, it's a lot of hours, it's a lot of, you know, like afternoon shifts, night shifts, right? Because that's when athletics happen. So, you know, you come into this field knowing that it's going to be hard work and it's going to, you know, take some sacrifice. But, you know, work-life balance, it all kind of depends on the, you know, again, the setting, and then the clinician, right? Because, you know, if I work at the college level where I'm assigned one team, you know, I just have to be there when the team's there. Or, you know, so, but at the high school level, I have to be there for my shift. You know, I usually show up around noon to 8, and that's usually when I try to get all my paperwork done, all my filing, all my documentation, everything. And so that way, you know, I could stay up to date on everything. And, but yeah, you know, it's still important to find time. So like, I like music, so I like to listen to music, or, you know, I like to work out, so I try to do that stuff. So, but
Now, while I on your survey, I noticed you had I looked through your responses, but I wanted to ask you, how do you guys feel when your team is like out there winning and like going to championships and all of that stuff?
yeah, so again, right, athletic trainers have that unique relationship with their patients, that they see them every day. So you actually get to know them as people, you know, and yeah, you know, some other professions, you know, they get to know them as people too, but, you know, we're with them beyond that, you know, like at most maybe like an hour appointment. We're with them, you know, we do the pregame treatments. We're with them on the sidelines. If they get hurt, you know, they come up to us or we go up to them, and we kind of communicate, and we develop plans and stuff. So, you know, hey, can you get back to the game safely? Are you going to be able to, you know, continue? And then when they get back, you know, like it's a celebration for both of us, you know. Like I'm super happy when they are able to get back, and, you know, when they score the winning touchdown, or, you know, they score the winning basket, or, you know, they score the winning goal, you know, etc. Like that's a celebration for me too, because I know the hard work that they put in to get back.
Right.
So like I love it. We just had a team that recently won a section championship. So you know, I practice in the state of California. California is a really big state, so we practice in the central section of the California Interscholastic Federation.
Okay.
Say that 5 times.
I know, that's like foreign to me. I'm like, that sounds cool, but I don't.
Yeah. And, you know, there's a lot of kids that, you know, they came in, they worked hard, and, you know, they got to reward themselves by being crowned champions. And, you know, I love it. I get to be a part of it too.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's really cool. It's like you're the coach that also helps them like physically be in you know, ready for the game, besides just running the plays or whatever. It's a very cool thing for sure. Now, before I head to my last few questions, do you guys work with, in your setting specifically, do you work with any other healthcare professionals besides a physician?
Yeah, so athletic trainers, they always coined the term the sports medicine team.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different physicians that could fall into your sports medicine team, right? So first one obviously is your team physician, right? Because without the team physician, you can't really practice, because you can't legally do anything without that.
Right.
So they're the first ones. And then also, at the site level, my district works heavily with our school nurses and with regards to, the concussion return to play protocol, where, I run the actual athletic return to play protocol, and they run the return to learn play protocol.
Mm.
So that's just ensuring that, hey, they're able to, get through a whole day of class without any symptoms, without, having to take breaks, or if they do need breaks, okay, well, let's make sure that they're, aided to make sure that they don't fall behind in classes. So it's a
Mm.
lot of, making sure they get someone to take their notes, or, maybe the teacher provides them the notes, things like that. We also work with the school physician, or sorry, school psychologist, sorry. And, we make the mental health referrals, right? So, we pretty much, we do that at the site level. We also work with local, orthopedic physicians, or, physical therapists, a lot of, just any sort of, you know, person that's going to affect the rehab of an injury. We refer them out. We talk to them. We communicate. We establish, a plan how to, provide care and, transfer care between our, providers, and we kind of go from there.
Okay. And now, do you have, let's say, as you mentioned, there are multiple settings, right? For you, let's say for you to move to a different setting as an ATC, do you have to go back to school, or do you have to do a specific training? What's that transition like between specialties or work settings?
Yeah. So, you don't necessarily have to do any additional trainings,
Mm-hmm.
but some positions might require you to, maybe get dual credentialed in physical therapy and athletic training, which is something that's common. Or sometimes, they might require certain experience because you're working at a higher level. There's a lot more pressure. And so they want to make sure that you can handle it. So one of the requirements is like having experience with, NCAA Division I football,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you want to make sure that you're able to do that. And then, also just sometimes they require a master's degree, but not always.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so those are usually the typical ones, but, I can hop right away into the college setting. I can hop, right away into an industrial setting and just kind of go from there.
So it really depends. Whatever other credentials you may need, it depending on where you're going to, right? Where your move is next. Okay. Um, and are there any opportunities for leadership in as an ATC?
Yeah. So, that's also one of the things that I do and don't like.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things is that, depending on your setting, there is opportunities to lead. It's just that those settings are very few and far in between,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like, depending on whether your, your high school district is set up in a way that, follows like a medical model, you might have to report to your athletic director, or, to your district athletic director. Whereas in other, in other districts, you might be reporting to like a district athletic trainer, or a director of a health services department, and that's how you communicate care to all the kids. But so to answer the question, there is and there isn't. It just kind of depends on where it is, because like I said, athletic trainers are still currently in the phase of establishing their worth, establishing their value, and they're trying to get stuff set up in a way that better provides care to the athletes and to the patients that they serve.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, that's about all the questions I have for you. You cover a lot of information, and I really appreciate it. I myself learned a lot about ATC, so I appreciate that. At some point, this is a fun story. One of my professors in PA, she was an athletic trainer before she went to PA school as a
Mm-hmm.
bachelor's degree.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just confused by the ATC. I was like, where's the C comes from? I get the athletic trainer, but where is the C come from? She was like, the C is for certified, just like PAC, and I was like, oh, I'm dumb. Like, how did
Well, there's a funny story. When they were coming up with that credential,
Mhm.
it was originally because, if I were to, say what my title is, I'm going to say certified athletic trainer, right? But
Right,
those credentials spell out CAT. So they
right.
didn't want to do CAT. So they went athletic trainer certified.
I
So just to
see.
kind of do that.
I know I was just like, huh, where does it where does the C come from? But no, it makes total sense. So if any listeners out there like me who's like ATC, but you mean athletic trainer, the C is for certified, okay? It comes after instead of before because they don't want to be called cat. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, that's a
Like,
that's a fun
meow,
fact.
no.
Yeah, as a fun fact, not very known, but I did hear that from one of my mentors that I've had in the past, and so it stuck with me. So
Yeah,
fun
no,
fact.
that's a very fun, but I appreciate that. And
Yeah,
that would definitely stick with me for sure. But no, thank you so much. One last question. Do you have any advice for folks who may want to go into athletic training?
yeah. So definitely shadow intern with a certified athletic trainer. My advice is to verify that they are a certified athletic trainer because one point I wanted to touch on
Mm,
in the podcast is that currently there are 49 states in the United States that have regulation for athletic trainers. And unfortunately, California is the only state in the United States that does not. So
mm,
that is one of the battles that California has been trying to do for multiple years, where
mm,
they're trying to get regulation for the profession so that, the athletes and the patients that we serve are, provided care by qualified healthcare professionals.
mhm, mhm,
And yeah, so I mean, like I said, I would definitely, recommend interning with someone who's certified, and
mhm.
you could verify that by going on to, I believe it's what's the website? It's like bocat.org. Um, for those of you who know what the website is, and I said it wrong, I apologize. But you could look that up, and you could verify whether they are. And there is a whole process in California that if you are aware of somebody who isn't certified, you
Mhm,
can report them.
mhm.
Because again, no one wants to be treated by a doctor who isn't, you know, credentialed to be a doctor. Like I
Right,
wouldn't want to trust my kid with an athletic trainer that isn't certified. So
right.
that's one of the things.
That leads me to one question I totally brushed over is after y'all are done with your master's degree, do you have a board exam you have to take to get certified?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
it is the board certification exam. It is an exam that I will never want to take again because that was super stressful. But yeah, so the way that it works is that so the I'm gonna word vomit this title, but the acronym for the organization that organizes the education part of athletic training is called
Mm,
CATIE.
okay.
So the uh, I should have looked this up. So it's like
It's okay. Just brush over
but
that
yeah,
one.
Kate. So it's Katie. Katie
How
is in
about you
charge
send me
of.
the link and I'll share it with the listeners? How about
Yeah, that'll work. So Katie's in charge of the educational portion
mm-hmm.
of what athletic trainers learn, and then that's where they fulfill their competencies through the educational programs, and then once they graduate from a accredited athletic training program, then they are eligible to sit for the board of certification exam, and then
Mm-hmm.
that's where they sit for the written part of the exam. So it's a two-part step to become a certified athletic trainer. You can't do one without the other one, and you need them both to become an athletic trainer. And then your certification just gets recertified every 2 years, so long as you get 50 continued education units every year.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Thank you so much again. I appreciate you taking the time It's almost bedtime for me over here because I have very early mornings.
Yeah, so thank you so much for, being patient with me. Like I said, I would have done it in the van of the car or in the van, but it would have been kind of noisy. So I thank you for, being willing to be flexible with me.
No, you're fine. We might have to do another episode in the van just to get like the raw background of like this is what happened.
Yeah.
Like literally on the ground, right? Hands on
Yeah,
interview.
I'll let you know when I have another football game or something, and while I'm setting up, we'll go and I'll do it in the stands or something, and you'll get to see everything.
Exactly. No, thank you so much, Francisco. I appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time and shedding some light on your profession. I look forward to where the profession goes. It's always an exciting thing when the profession is in the growth section. So we'll keep watching out. I watch out for ATC. You watch out for PA. We'll see where we go. Okay.
Definitely. We look forward to working with you.
Likewise, Francisco. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
All right. That's all I have for you today. Thank you again for joining me. I appreciate you. Please subscribe, follow, like, comment, and share. And stay blessed. Bye.